If you've ever left a meeting feeling clear, well understood, and then sometimes later someone reaches out to you and says, that's not quite what we agreed, then this episode will save you a lot of stress. Hey everyone, welcome back to the Thrive Careers podcast. Today, we are talking about something that quietly changes everything, and it's the power of documentation and how to use it without sounding rude, petty, or overly formal. Most people don't document because I find that most people believe that it is not necessary. Or there is this sense of awkwardness that comes with trying to document that most people would ordinarily like to avoid. And so they don't document. And if that has ever happened to you, you would be able to relate to one of these four scenarios. One, the people who believe that I don't want to look like I am keeping receipts. All right. There's a category like that. There's also the category B that believes I don't want to offend my manager. And so they would rather avoid the conversations around documentation. Some people also believe it's just faster to say it and move on. And there is the very popular category of people who believe I'll always remember. I will remember. But then usually what happens after is what most people do not envisage. So sometimes priority changes, someone forgets, your task gets redefined, or you either end up doing the work you never signed up to do or agreed to do in the first place. And now you're stuck trying to explain what happened without coming across as being defensive. Now, the next thing I want us to do is to reframe that whole perspective around the subject of documentation. And here's the shift. Documentation is not about mistrust. Neither is it about building a case against anyone. Documentation is simply building clarity that lasts. And when done well, it helps to protect your time, your workload, your performance conversations, and most importantly, it helps to protect your peace. And that's my personal favorite because my peace means everything to me. And if you're newer to a workplace, working in a cross-functional team, or simply building confidence, documentation is one of the easiest ways to build credibility and to also look organized. I was having a conversation with one of my guests in one of my previous episodes, and they shared their experience of how, in their previous work, they didn't align on expectations with their line manager. And, different things kept coming at them, which weren't agreed on at the beginning. Until they tapped into the power of documentation, it was always a case of constantly trying to prove themselves. So, having said that, I'd like to share exactly what we are going to be covering in today's episode. One, we're going to be covering how to document work conversations without coming across as rude. Two, simple work documentation habits for Slack, emails, and meetings. Three, how you can tap into the power of documentation to enhance your promotion conversations and during your performance review sessions. So stay with me because on this episode, I'm going to be giving you exact phrases and a simple framework you can use almost immediately. So you're not overthinking what to write, when to write, or how to write it. One of the biggest fears that I've seen is people say, if I document it, then I will come across as being aggressive. The key thing you need to note here is your tone, because documentation can be warm, collaborative, and it can feel absolutely normal. But there are a few simple rules that you need to apply, which is assume good intent. Make sure you're writing for clarity, not for correction. Learn to use alignment language. And these phrases would help you to keep your conversation warm, professional, and acceptable. What I'm about to say now is very important, so I would implore you to get your pen and your paper because I'm about to give out the exact phrases that I spoke about. So, for example, if the scenario is after a meeting, you were in a meeting with your boss or your colleagues and the meeting has now been concluded. You can say something like, just capturing my notes so we are aligned, all right? Or you can tweak it a bit and say, Just a quick recap to confirm that we are on the same page on these subjects. All right. Or you can also say, here's what I'm taking away from this meeting. Can you tell me if I've missed out on anything? Now, that keeps it very conversational and collaborative so you're able to document appropriately. Also, another scenario might be after a decision has been made. And here are the phrases you can use. One, you can say, I'm trying to confirm the next steps and the timelines. Do you see? Very specific. Also, you could use the phrase, I'm sharing a summary so we can have it in one place. That is also very powerful. Now, another very common scenario is when work scope changes. All right. You can use phrases like this to get more clarity. One, to make sure that I'm prioritizing correctly, can you please confirm which of these is the most urgent? Or you can say, if you're going to be adding X, Y, and Z, what should move down or what should come off the list? You want to be very clear. Now, in this category, there is a last layer to it. When someone claims something different later, you've agreed on something and they come up to you later to say something different. And here's how you can clarify that. You can simply ask, I totally understand, but here's what I noted from our last conversation, but I'm happy to realign. Also, you can say, I may have misunderstood, but can we confirm the final direction? Do you notice what's happening here? You are not accusing, but rather you are inviting alignment just so the two parties involved are on the same page. And this is what documentation is all about. Now, here are 3 documentation formats that you can use every day. Very easy to know that you're properly documenting. You must have these 3 features. 1, decision. What was decided upon? Make it very clear. 2, owner. Who is doing what, when, and how? All right. And then the timeline by when. When is it going to be done? For example, if you're taking a recap from a conversation that just happened, the decision in this case would look like, okay, we'll move forward with option B. Do you see? That's a clear decision. And owner in this case would be, I'll draft the first version, then you'll review. And the timeline would have our first drafts ready by Thursday, or would get a feedback by Monday. Very clear, very succinct, very calm, and very useful. And that's it. Now we move on to talking about some simple work documentation habits that you can inculcate for your emails, for your Slack meetings, if you use Slack in your organization, or for both your online and physical meetings. Habit 1, always send the same day recap, because if you wait too long, it becomes awkward. But if you're sending it on the same day, it still feels very normal. So if this were in a Slack thread conversation, you can say something like, quick recap so we are all aligned. I'll handle A, you will handle B, and we're aiming for Friday. Sounds good? That's how it works. You can see the 3 elements come into play here: the decision, the owner, and the timeline. And if you're doing email version, you can say something like, thanks again. I'll be sharing a quick recap of the decisions plus next steps so we are all aligned. Do you see how it flows? You can see how that works together. The second habit that I would like you to inculcate is keeping documentation in the right place. For example, if your team runs on Slack, recap in the same thread or in the same channel for easy reference. If your organization uses project tools, make sure you put the decision, the owner, and the timeline in the task. If something is very important, you must put it somewhere that is easily searchable and stable. Habit 3, learn to use subject lines that helps to future you. And here's what I mean. If you're emailing, make it easy to find later. And I find a lot of people, get into this mix a few times. And I have encountered this myself where I didn't save my work correctly, or I didn't use the right subject line when I'm sending a documentation email. And then it becomes very difficult to find later. So example headlines, you can also use confirming priorities for Q1 launch, if that is the case. Or you can also use a subject line like follow up, and then put the decision and the timeline clearly in the subject line. That way, it's very easy for you to find later. This is the number 4 habits. Learn to document priorities when you are overloaded. This is one of the best uses of documentation, especially if you're trying to avoid burnout. So you can use short phrases like, here's what I'm working on this week in priority order. If priorities have changed, can you confirm what should move? This helps to protect you from silent expectations and last minute blame, especially if you work in a fast paced environment where everything is happening so fast. The only way to avoid burnout in an environment like that is to ensure that your documentation game is strong. Now, the 5th habit that I'm recommending is for you to inculcate the habit of documenting your feedback as well as your expectations. Now, this particularly matter for conversations around performance. After feedback, here's what I would recommend you say. Say thank you, but just confirming the key expectations going forward. Should I focus on X, improve on Y, deliver on Z? Let me know if I captured that correctly. Now you have a clarity and a record should there be a need for it in the future. Also, if you work in an environment where you are constantly getting verbal requests, here's how you can establish boundary without coming across as being rude or disrespectful. Say something like, oh, of course, I'm happy to help, but can you please drop that in an email or raise a ticket so I don't miss anything? That's not rude. That's you being professional and also the good management of your time. There's been a lot of misconceptions about people getting into performance review conversations or asking for a raise and not being able to back it with a lot of documentation or a lot of proof to justify their ask for a raise. But here's what I'd like to say to that. Keep in mind, documentation isn't just for protection on days like that. It's actually also for visibility. So if your work isn't visible, it's easier for it to be forgotten, undervalued, or credited to someone else in the team without specifically calling out your contribution on the task that was done. So if you find yourself in cases like this, documentation can help you in 3 big ways. Number 1, it builds your proof of impact file. So when review seasons come, you're not scrambling. You know exactly what you've done and you can present them accurately. The number 2 way that documentation helps you in this scenario is it makes your communication look stronger because you're able to provide a clear recap with a clear thinking to back it up. People tend to trust coworkers who are able to summarize well, follow through, or keep things organized, or to reduce confusion. So that's a leadership energy right there without you needing a fancy title. You want to lean in on this. When you're ready to ask for more pay, more responsibility, a better role, documentation can give you those specifics that you can bring forward. And more often than not, you find people being disappointed after such conversations because you hear phrases like, I have worked really hard and I deserve this. When they should have been saying, here are the projects that I worked upon. Here are the outcomes, and this is the scope. Now that becomes very undeniable and it changes the game when you're having promotion conversations. To make this even simpler to execute, you can create a note on your phone or even on your laptop, whichever one is convenient for you. And you can have what I delivered, what problem I solved, any positive feedback, and the numbers if you have them. It becomes very handy and you can use that to enhance your performance conversations. Depending on how you choose to see it, documentation isn't actually extra work. It's work that makes the rest of your work easier. Thanks for tuning in today. So now you can go with full understanding to make your work easier to manage, easier to remember, and of course, easier to recognize. And until I come your way again next time, keep thriving. And that's it for today's episode of Thrive Careers Podcast. I am Olajumoke Fataki, reminding you that no matter where you are in your career, you have the power to rewrite your story. If you've enjoyed today's insights, do not forget to subscribe, leave a review, and share this episode with someone who's ready to thrive. If you have questions or topics you'd like for me to cover, let's connect. I would love to hear from you. Remember, clarity creates confidence, and confidence leads to success. And until I come your way again next time, stay inspired and keep thriving.